Hello, Slicey Dicers. This is Brian with another little knife video for you. And today, this is one that I think needs some explanation, hence the reason why I'm talking directly to you before we switch to the tabletop and get into some knives. So this is kind of what I consider the definitive knives of their general categories. That said, there are no fixed blades or no traditionals because I'm just not super into those, so I don't feel qualified to comment on that. So in the kind of modern, folding pocket knife, the ones that I think define their subcategories, doesn't mean that they're my favorites, doesn't mean that they're the best. It just means that I think they're the ones that either kind of pioneered that category or made major steps in that category, or ones that really kind of have driven that category since they've come out. So some of them are pretty old. Some of them are fairly new. You're not going to see any brand new stuff here because I don't think you can really you can really put that label on anything like that yet. So I think that pretty much explains it. This is a bit of a kind of high concept-y sort of thing, maybe, but we'll see. It's a video I've been trying to put together in my head for months, and now I finally feel like maybe it's time to do it. So without any further ado, let's go to the desktop and check out some knives. Okay, let's get going with our first few categories here. First up, we have, I think, the most obvious one, the modern day EDC. Just everyday carry knife that you want to have a good mix of being fairly robust but still fairly light, easy to carry, maybe have some fidget factor. I think that's important in a knife like this. So I think there are two knives that have really helped define this over the last couple of decades. Both of them, I think, are fairly obvious choices, and both of them are actually two knives now. So the first one would be the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, or the Para 3 if you prefer a smaller one. Pretty hard to argue with these, definitely. Again, these are not necessarily my all-time favorites or even the best in their categories, but I think knives that really help define it. I think in a lot of people's heads, when you think of all-arounder EDC, a lot of people, the PM2 might be one that pops into your head. Still a knife that I recommend right before Christmas. A good friend of mine really wanted to spend about $200, maybe a little bit less, on a pocket knife, and he couldn't really try anything out. Couldn't really even come to my house, check anything out. So I said, yeah, get a PM2. Almost no one hates them. When you get it, everybody's pretty happy with the PM2. It's a really, really good all-around knife. Fairly tough, maybe a little bit of a dainty tip, but other than that, fairly tough knife. Ergos are pretty darn good. Very reliable lock system that's still a lot of fun to play with. It's a Spyderco. It's made in the US. They have pretty good warranty stuff. Nothing really to complain about, other than maybe the price. That's one thing that's creeping up on these a little bit. These are the MaxMet versions. They're both well over $200, but the base Paramilitary 2 and the black G10 and the S30V, you're looking at like $155 and $147 respectively for the Para 3. So they're creeping up there a little bit in price, but still hard to deny that they are knives that help define the category. And that's why I use these as size comparison knives, because a lot of knife enthusiasts, if they don't currently own one, they've at least owned one. They have a good idea what they look like. That's why you see these in so many videos as size comparisons. Next up, I think also a fairly obvious choice for the modern EDC, and one that's been around also for an extremely long time, just celebrated its 20th anniversary. That would be the Benchmade 940. This happens to be the 940-1 in the carbon fiber and S90V. Great Osborne design. Comes in a million different versions. Again, like I said, been around for 2 decades now. The difference between this and like the PM2 is this is kind of the more slim, lightweight, super easy to carry modern EDC, I would say. Get a bunch of different configurations. Start out at $175, which is a little much, I gotta say now, for G10 and S30V, but still wonderful knives. And honestly, S30V is all that anybody really needs, but just in that price category, you often see higher end steel, so that's why I bring that up. But again, has that fidget factor. Excellent ergos for being so slim. I have really long fingers, and I still find a 940 to be very comfortable. And now, there's a smaller one, just starting this year. This is the 945. Now this version's actually not out yet, but they did the 945 BK-1 that's been out with the G10 and a coated blade. This is more like what you got in your standard 940 with the aluminum and the purple, except it has a backspacer on the on the 940, but still, this green aluminum with the purple accents in the S30V blade. This is just kind of a smaller version of that knife. As I stab my own table, it's okay, it's been insolent. But I love the 940. It definitely has helped define this category. I think that that's pretty hard to argue against, although I'm sure you will in the comments. Please put in the comments what you think your definitive knives are. This is something that is kind of a subjective thing, so I'm just speaking as a reviewer, what kind of helps define the category for me. Next category would be automatics. We're start off with a couple OTFs that are, again, much like the ones you saw before, the same family. That would be the Microtech Ultratech, and if you want something a little bit smaller, the UTX 85, because these are all the same design, just the 85 is 85% of the size of the Ultratech. I will say, I was really late to the party on the Ultratech. I just actually got this one a few days ago, and I do get it. I do get why they call this, especially the Ultratech, sort of the, I've heard a lot of people call it like the benchmark, you know, of OTFs. There are ones with smoother action now. There are ones that are maybe a little bit better value now, but still, it's undeniable that it is a very good knife ergonomically, super easy to carry, nice and slim. And the UTX 85 is just that plus more because it's a little smaller. But these are both the Tanto blade versions. They come in a bunch of different versions, a ton of different colors. This is one of the special editions, the Bounty Hunter. Well, it's hard to call it a special edition because they do bring it out every couple of years, which is cool. I'm glad they do, but the Mythosaurus skull Mandalorian thing on it, and it's intentionally beat up. I didn't do this to it. It comes that way. So this is just an example of one of the kind of special edition ones you can get. But they are just both excellent OTFs. Microtech builds a damn good knife, and I really do enjoy, especially this UTX, or this Ultratech, I'm sorry, really has really impressed me in the few days that I've had it. It's just been, I get it. I get why everybody loves them so much. I liked the UTX 85 a lot. I really like that in that size and form factor. Again, that's a thing that's kind of subjective. Potato, whichever one you want. And lastly, for automatics, got to have a ProTech. And I went all over the place on what ProTech. What is the ProTech to me for an out the side automatic? And it's got to be the Newport, which is a fairly small one, but they sell a ton of these. I love the Newport. Starting out about 165 bucks. Oh, by the way, those Ultratechs earlier, $295 starting out for an Ultratech, $250 for a UTX 85. Just to get that away. I apologize, I skipped that earlier, but not worth going back to refilm that part for that. So the ProTech, again, Newport, yeah, 165 starting out. This one's a little bit more. It's got the carbon fiber inlay and the naked aluminum. But again, ton of different versions, including full-on customs that are super, super fancy. You know, custom engraving and titanium and all that stuff. That great, snappy ProTech action. I think that's why I have to put a ProTech in for autos, because for out-the-side action, man, it is really, really, really hard to beat a ProTech. Microtech themselves, I mentioned earlier, they have the LUDTs pretty close, but it's still just not quite ProTech to me. This thing hits so hard for being so tiny, and in particular the Newport. It is an auto that isn't going to scare the crap out of everybody. It looks a little bit stabby maybe, but it's very slim. It's very discreet to carry. It has a nice deep carry clip. It would be less discreet if it had a smaller deep carry clip, but which is kind of the only real downside I have to the Newport. I wish I had a shorter pocket clip, but yeah, the ergos are very good for the size. S35 VN steel, which some ProTechs still are sticking to that 154 CM thing, which people don't like very much. I actually really like that steel, but if you want a more modern steel, yes, the Newport is one that has S35 VN. I think they're slowly transitioning a lot of their models to S35, but oh, bang, it's just, love that action. Easy to one-hand close. Just really cool little out-the-side automatic. Next up, we're going to go to high-end EDCs. So you hear about the Holy Trinity. Everybody argues about what the third one is, but I think two that they don't argue about, and that's why I have these two brands on here, would be Hinderer. Start off with that XM18. I think this is the most Hinderer. Not necessarily even my favorite Hinderer, but I will say it is the most Hinderer. Comes in a bunch of different variations as demonstrated by this. This is a non-flipper. Fullered Spear, DLT exclusive, I believe, M390. Has a full titanium scale, which is a Hinderer scale. It's not made by somebody else, with the Warhog on it. Again, a DLT exclusive, I think. You know, different pocket. And these are all genuine Hinderer parts. You can stick with genuine Hinderer parts and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And if you want to offend the purist and venture off into aftermarket world, you can do even more. These start out at 425 bucks. That seems to be kind of almost the standard Hinderer price for almost everything until you get to the bigger stuff. But, you know, the ergos are good. It's a very tough built knife. Now they've gone to this tri-way pivot, so you get your choice of bearings, washers in either phosphor bronze or Teflon, so hence the name tri-way. And on the bearings, it's just so super smooth. I like the Fullered Spear one because you can Spidey flick it. But yeah, good ergos. It's maybe a bit tactically for some people. I've grown to get used to it, I guess. When you put the full tie scale on it, they get a bit heavy. But in base form, they're just a hair over 5 ounces. They're not too bad at all. And again, just endlessly customizable. The Hinderer quality, you can really feel it in your hand. I think it's got to be one that helps define the higher end EDC category. Not going into full-on customs. There aren't going to be customs on here because that would be impossible to pick ones to define them, and I don't really own any, so that's another reason why I'm just not super into customs. I'm pretty happy with what I can get with production when you get into this kind of level. Next up, I chose one model from this brand, but honestly, it could be any one of 2, maybe even 3. Chris Reeve. My favorite is the Inkosi. This is the large Inkosi. I like the Inkosi better than the Sebenza. I like it better than the Unimzon. But you could easily stick a Sebenza in here. A lot of people could justifiably, or I should have a Sebenza in here instead, because it's long been the standard for high-end EDCs. Everybody said, I want a Sebenza. When they price out another object, they'd be like, oh, I really like that watch, but it's Sebenza money. You know, everybody knows that means 425 bucks. So, you know, you just kind of know that that's what they start out at. And you know, it's like around 400 bucks. It's so definitive, it's become a unit of measure. But I happen to prefer the Inkosi, so that's what I have here. But yeah, very similar looking knife. Just if you prefer Sebenza, just imagine this is a Sebenza and don't flame me in the comments. But the Chris Reeve quality is undeniable. They're extremely well made. You can really tell it when you take them apart, and the company encourages you to. It comes with the tools to do it. It comes with the grease to maintain it. You can really tell when you take it apart because they just come apart super easy, go back together super easy. No muss, no fuss. They're just awesome. This has an aftermarket Casey Lynch milled pocket clip on it. And this is a micarta scale Tanto version. But they have come out in many. And again, the Sebenza 31 has only come out in a few versions because it's new. But the old 21s and stuff, there's so many different versions of them. It is just a great hard use-ish sort of high-end folder. It's not like super snappy, but it has that smooth hydraulic action, as people like to call it. It's not like a drop shutty machine. It's not super fidgety or anything. But yeah, you can flick it out and all that stuff. Yeah, I prefer the Inkosi, but insert Chris Reeve of your choice here. Some people like the Zahn a lot. It's whatever. Insert Chris Reeve of choice. They're all great. And yeah, I'll start out around that 425, 450 price range and go up from there depending on what stuff. I think this one was 550. I think if I remember correctly. Now on to the next category, that would be budget knives. And I really do think there are 2 that have very clearly defined this category, at least for me, since I've been running this channel. One from a few years ago, one a little sooner. But first up, you gotta say the Ontario Rat, whether it's this Model 1 or the smaller Model 2. These are both the D2 models. Both just awesome, good, no nonsense. Phosphor bronze washer, easy to use knives. Just they're comfortable. There's nothing really complicated about them. And they're $40. D2 steel, 40 bucks. You can't really go wrong with that. They come in a bunch of different colorways, especially the Model 2 for some reason. This one actually is not really black. This came a desert tan, and I dyed it black. Actually, I tried to dye it purple, and it didn't come out, and I just gave up and dyed it black. But that's why it doesn't quite match the black. But, you know, simple construction, FRN handles, but really nice FRN. People bag on FRN a lot. There are varying degrees of FRN, and Ontario's is really, really good. They're made in Taiwan. You know, good pocket clip that you can get a bunch of different options for. And again, just, yeah, those awesome ergos. Every time I pick up, especially the Model 1, I'm just always reminded just how good it is and the noise they make. That's a great, great sound. This always makes, like I do every now and then, you know, my best sounding knives in my collection, which I need to update that. This is always on the list. I just think an Ontario Rat Model 1, it sounds really good. And when they came out with that D2 steel, like when I first started this channel a bit over 3 years ago, that was like a big, huge thing. And that was kind of the video that put me on the map. I got some of the first R2D2s. I got 2 of them in. This was one of them. I got this one in a carbon fiber one. And it was a video that really took off, and it's understandably so. People were just so elated when this came out in D2. It used to be 8CR, or OS8, I think, which those are still fine. And you can find the OS8 ones sometimes at like Walmart and stuff like that. So it is just an excellent, excellent budget knife. Still remains so. Doesn't get all the fanfare it used to, but I use these for size comparisons again. So you can see a lot of these knives on here I use for size comparisons. The Microtech too I got for size comparisons. So you can see that, but there's a reason. We've all had them, or at least seen one. Like a lot of real knife, you've probably at least seen one enough you have a good idea what size it is, because it is just kind of, you know, ubiquitous. It's the, you know, Toyota Camry of budget knives, and there's nothing wrong with that. The Camry's a really good car. It's not gonna, you know, it's not gonna be a panty dropper, but it's a really, it's a really good car, and these are really, really good knives. Almost impossible not to recommend in the budget category. The Rat Model 1 or the R2D2, both just excellent. Now, another budget brand you can't help but mention anymore, especially in this year of 2021, is Civivi. And I think still the best Civivi they make in the budget category, $42.50, is still one of the first ones, one of the first 3 that came out, the Backlash. I still love the Backlash. Nice hollow ground blade, very slicey. These are like 14 or 15 thousandths behind the edge. That was like unheard of when these came out. Kind of now everything is. And really it was Civivi that drove that. Only like really high-end custom knives had that were that thin behind the edge. All Civivis are. Most Wiis are now. They kind of trickled up. The previous Wiis before Civivi came out, a lot of them weren't this thin behind the edge. It kind of was a thing that trickled up. This is the OG black scales with the blue liners. It's one of the first ones they made. Still running great. Still love it. 9CR18 MOV steel, which I think is an awesome steel. Some people just equate it to 8CR13 MOV because it says CR in it. It is not the same. It is a very, very good steel. Holds an edge very well. Super easy to sharpen. I really, really like 9CR18. I love the ergos on this thing. I like the looks of it. It's kind of future-y, but it's not over the top. The Backlash, I think, is still the best thing they make. I know I gave the Ortis is really good. That's one I gave Budget Knife of the Year last year, but I still kind of prefer the Backlash. It's just a fantastic freaking knife. You could insert a whole lot of Civivis in here, whichever one fits, you know, your category. But I think for the one that kind of defined the modern budget, you know, Chinese folder, and really, you know, kicked the ball very far down the field for everybody else to follow, was the Backlash and the Praxis, and I don't remember the other one that came out at the same time. But yeah, when those came out, it was a revelation, and it took everybody else years to catch up, and a lot of people still haven't. You gotta this is probably like the most definitive knife of all the knives on here, I think, because it's just the way it changed the game. Yeah, the Backlash for sure. Now we are going to go into hard use folders. Insert "you shouldn't use a folder for hard use" comments down below. I know, but we do. So here's my hard use folder list. So I hate to start right off with another hinderer, but I'm going to there's only 2 on the list, don't worry. That would be the XM24. This is the newer sheep's foot one, but it's just basically a bigger, heavier, dutier XM18, and love it. It definitely gives you a feeling of, you know, I can cut through this steel wall sort of feeling in your hand. It is big in the pocket, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as some people make it out to be. It's heavy, 7-something ounces. But again, that tri-weight pivot, silly good action with that big heavy blade. Awesome ergos. And, you know, Hinders were designed by a first responder. Rick Hinder is a first responder, so they're meant to work good in that kind of category. Nice grippy G10, if that's the finish you go with. And almost as customizable as the XM18. You can get almost as much stuff. Scales are really hard to come by for these, but other than that, the hardware and all this stuff, pretty easy to come by. So still pretty customizable. Bunch of different blade shapes available from the factory when they're available. Hinder typical stuff, you know. Something I didn't mention when I was talking about the XM18. You know, they come in batches and they come and they go, and you just have to grab the one you want when it's available. But you can always get an XM24. It may just not be the one you want. Same with the XM18. You can always get one. It may just not be exactly the configuration that you want. Downside to the 24 is, for some reason, it is a lot more than an 18. Must be just because they make fewer of them. I don't know. They do make dramatically fewer of these than they do of the 24. I did learn that recently. I can't remember what the percentage was, but it was crazy. I think it was like 30% or something like that. But anyway, these are $595. So they're very, very expensive. I don't get why they're that expensive. But they have their reasons. I haven't really had a problem with Hinder prices before, so there must be a good reason behind it. But yeah, I like this sheep's foot one. The 24 is just it's a big old bruiser. If you want to spend a lot of money on a big old bruiser, this is the one. You're going to think, oh, I don't want to use it at $600. That's what they're meant for. Use it. Use it. A little bit less expensive, $192. Got to have a cold steel. And I think the best hard use cold steel, the one that I feel the most confident using for really hardcore use, is the 8010. Fairly new cold steel, but a design that's been out for a while by Andrew Demko. So this is just the cold steel version of it. Get $192, S35 VN. Earlier versions were hollow grind. This one is flat ground. But awesome ergos. That Triad Lock. You got to have a Triad Lock when you're talking about hard use. It is, I believe them that it is the toughest lock out there. You can hang a car off the damn thing and it won't break. I'm almost not exaggerating. I know they've hung like engine blocks off and stuff and they haven't broke. But just super good ergos if you're doing a lot of stuff for a long time. This isn't going to cramp your hand up. You're not going to get hot spots or anything like that. It works well in gloves. Works well without gloves. It's just the right amount of jimping. And man, this thing feels solid. It definitely gives an air of confidence, absolutely for sure. And I love Demko designs, and I think this is one of his best. You have the pommel on there in the back if you need to use that for hammering something down. It's just awesome design. Nothing fancy. Nothing that's going to, blow your skirt up as far as the action goes, but you can still flick it out, get that big bang. Yeah, awesome knife. And if you're really paranoid, you can stick a pin in there and, make sure it doesn't close on you. But I think, as I said multiple times, if you break a Triad Lock, that's probably the least of your worries. Something horrible has occurred if you break a Triad Lock, so I don't think I'd be worrying too much about that pin. Now, next up, we're going to go somewhat similar category, but a bit different. We're going to go into tactical. So we're going to go from cold steel to cold steel. I think definitely a definitive knife in the tactical, if you got to defend yourself, sort of, man, mall ninja fantasy knife, or in real situations, if you have a job where you do have to use a knife as an emergency last resort kind of thing. I think a knife that has defined this for years is another cold steel, the Recon 1. This is a Tanto version. They come in a drop point as well, or a clip point as well. But I like the Tanto. I think it looks cool. The newer ones are S35 VN. This is one of those. About $100, so price isn't bad. They're pretty lightweight for being such a big knife. Full 4-inch blade, and that usual cold steel kind of okay action, but nothing that blow your skirt up. Again, that Triad Lock, as I fail to flick it open. You have that Triad Lock again. They carry very well, very slim, very light. $100, can't go wrong. All the good reverse grip and all that stuff, It carries well in any grip you want to grab it. Nice grippy G10. So grippy that I prefer to sand down the spot where the clip touches so that it doesn't destroy my jeans, but that's your choice whether or not you want to do that. But hard to argue with the Recon one being one of the tactical knives of the modern era. The next one in that tactical sort of category, another one that I think has very much been, I don't think anyone would argue with this, and another repeat brand, Microtech Socom. Again, this is a Tanto. You guys, you're kind of seeing in this video, I didn't realize how many Tantos I had on here. I guess I knew I kind of liked the Tanto. I didn't realize how much of a fan of, I guess I'm a big fan. But the Socom Elite, this is the manual version. There's also an auto. The manual one, you're looking at about $290. The auto, I think, is a little bit more or the same. I can't really remember. I'm not really super interested in the auto. But again, 4-inch blade. I'm not super interested in the auto because the manual is just so good. It's so smooth. And listen to the sound. That's you don't get much better than that. That's just good. That's just good eating right there. This kind of grippy texture on the handle, they're, again, very tactically oriented. It ain't going anywhere in gloved hands or in regular hands. In non-gloved hands. I assume if you fit gloves, you have fairly regular hands, unless you got them custom made. That's a whole other thing. But the only downside to it that I don't like is I have no problem with the price. You're getting some kind of M390 variant in these. I didn't mention that with the autos either. That's kind of the steel they use. It's either 204P or M390, or you get all kinds of different ones. It's usually some kind of M390 variant or equivalent. I don't remember what this one is. I know my Ultratech is M390. Yeah, this is M390. But the only thing I have a problem with is it is tipped down or only carry, which is very tactical. So for what it's designed for, that's probably fine. And I don't know, maybe for the design it does probably actually work a little bit better. But it's the only tip down knife that I have, and I don't really care to have another one. But it does work well for this. But that's the only thing. If you were totally anti tip down, but again, these are so well made. Another guy whose name escapes me, and I did this to mine too, did a video where he took all the screws out, including the pivot screw, and it still worked. It still stayed together enough to it just worked. That's how good the tolerances are on this. They're fantastic. You can take out all these body screws and the pivot screw, and it'll still flick and open and close like nothing's really wrong. His wasn't even off center. Mine went just a little bit off center, and that was it. Pretty amazing. Very, very tough knife. Full aluminum. They're not super heavy. And again, $290, I think is more than fair for one of these. Downside is they're a bit hard to get a hold of. If you want to spend $2.5 grand on a custom version, you can buy those all the time. But if you want, this one took me over a year to find. I wanted this configuration, black with the Tanto stonewash. And yeah, it took me over a year to get my hands on one. So keep that in mind. But they're not horribly expensive. They're just hard to get. That's a misconception with Microtechs and Protechs, I think, to a point. People think they're really expensive. They're not. It just takes a minute to get the exact one you want. Now, next up, we will go second to last category. We're going to go for the 5th pocket knife. So that knife that fits in that little coin pocket, watch pocket, whatever you want to call it in your jeans. That, secondary kind of knife. I could call it secondary knives as well, but I like to call it 5th pocket knife. This is a fairly new one, but one that was so popular when they came out. They were really hard to get for nearly a year. That would be the CRKT Pilar. This is the original OG base one, 8CR13 MOV, stainless steel front and back, frame lock. There have been several since, not only different steels, not only in different scales, but also in different sizes. There's a P-Large. There's a Pilar 3 that's out now that I will be getting one. I'm just waiting for the D2 ones to hit. But Jesper Voxnay's design, I think the revolutionary thing about this was for its size. This is sorry to do this off screen, 2.5-inch blade, and the ergos are out freaking standing, which is unsurprising from Voxnay's. He does amazing ergonomics. I've always found his ergos to be really good. It is tip up, tip down, right hand only, but just a great little 5th pocket knife. The base one, like $30 for one of these, for one like this. And, you can Spidey flick and all that stuff when you actually have manual dexterity. And again, very robust aftermarket modification community, I guess, on these. So a lot of people just modify these steel ones, stone wash them and you acid wash them and all that kind of stuff. And then there are companies that make scales. Scale's probably going to cost you as much as the knife did, but still, a lot of people like to pretty them up. It is a knife that's worth it, despite the 8CR13 steel. But again, you can find at least D2 ones. I know there was an S35 one that somebody did as a limited edition. Pretty cool little fifth pocket knife. But my favorite fifth pocket knife, and not that old either, but it would be the Spyderco Lil Native. Love this thing. I had one. I sold it like a moron. And then I not immediately, but fairly soon went out and got another one. Just, again, same kind of thing. Two and a bit inch blade. Yeah, I'm thinking about 2.5 inch blade, and the ergos work. It's cool to have a small little fifth pocket knife like this that the ergos work. It's super comfortable, and it crams in the compression lock, so you have something fun to fiddle with. Even if your main knife you're carrying isn't that fun to fiddle with, you still have a little fidget toy in your pocket. It just happens to be able to also cut things, which is pretty cool. You can Spidey flick it and all that. Wire clip. Love me a wire clip. Surprised only Spyderco on here with a wire clip. But yeah, love me a wire clip. Great little knife. Very much loved the Lil Native. Downside, again, same as I said. Cut and paste comments about the PM2 Para 3. It's $126. It's pretty pricey, but still. My favorite fifth pocket knife has been for quite a while. Last category we're going to, I could have done more. I thought about doing lightweights, but a lot of the ones that I had here just are lightweights. I think that's almost kind of a subcategory of all of these. I think you can look for a lightweight tactical knife. You can look for a lightweight everyday EDC. I think that's kind of like a subcategory of a subcategory. Same for like fidget stuff. You could look for that in almost any of these categories. So the last one, I'm going to say that it's kind of its own thing, and this is a bit harder to define, and that's why I saved it to last, but the gentleman's knife. That knife for when you're a little dressed up. You're out in the town with your wife. You are, you perhaps, you're a performer of some kind, and you want to have something discreet but nice and still have it on you. You work in an office. I have two for you. First up, it's pretty easy to pick it because it's in the name. It would be the Drop Ferrum Forged Gents. These are only about $100. They come and go on drop, but they're fairly regularly around. This one's a bit of a Frankenstein. I wanted the satin blade from the G10 version, but I wanted the fancy wooden scales from the fancier version. For some reason, the fancy versions have stonewash blades, so I did scale swap with somebody. But yeah, love the Gent. The action is excellent. Very Ferrum Forgy looking design, but slimmed down to being a gentleman's sort of thing. You can use this forward finger choil if you're careful. S35 VN, great price, made by We, so the quality is excellent. I love this little pocket clip. You would never think that was a knife in somebody's pocket. That's a great thing about it. Slim, light, awesome gents knife. Good thing it is, otherwise that name would be stupid. And lastly, this is another one again. You can insert Sebenza here if you want to, but I put Chris Reeve Small Inkosi because, as I said, I like the Inkosi better. This is the Insingo blade. This is a knife art exclusive with the carbon fiber scale, which I think makes it look even classier, and that's part of the reason why I chose this one as well. It does demonstrate, like especially on the Sebenzas. Sebenza's just slightly larger than this. I find that this actually fits my hand better than the Sebenza, but I'm definitely in the minority on that. I know that the #1 complaint online about the Small Inkosi is that these finger grooves don't work for some people. My skinny little fingers, it works. They work great. Whereas the Sebenza, I can't ever get my hand right where that clip isn't digging into my hand. So that's why I prefer the Inkosi. But yeah, the Sebenza has a bunch of different crazy engraved versions. There's a lot of versions of the Small Inkosi too that are pretty classy looking. So any one of these starting out at $375 and up. So yeah, you could easily spend, $500 on one of these in one of the custom engraved unique versions, which are super cool and just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And you can take like the pocket clip off and carry them in a little leather slip if you want to go ultimate class. That's like tuxedo level, I think. But fantastic kind of gentlemanly sized knives, and if you happen to be in your wife's office party situation, where you take out your classy knife and it's a Chris Reeve, and there happens to amazingly be another guy around that's a knife guy, you're going to be the coolest guy in the room. Pretty hard to argue with the cool factor of a Chris Reeve, whether it's a Sabenza or an Nkosi or whatever. So that is it. I hope you guys got the feel of this list and what I meant by it. I think I explained it okay, but yeah, it was a fun list to make and a fun video to make, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Brian. Have a good one.